And it's lights out. Welcome to our Fantasy Formula One podcast. I'm your host, Jeanmark, and joining me this evening on the Pitwall is my father, Dr. David Kessler. Thanks for being along, and let's kick it off to our dynamic pricing report as we prepare for the British Grand Prix this coming weekend. This is the very first time in this entire season that there has been no changes in pricing at all. Dad, why does this make you sad?
Because I thought I'd use my wild card and we had 2 weeks between races. So I thought that I would get some benefit from them and nothing's moved. So now I think I've wasted my wild card on 2 of my teams.
You did on both? Oh, no.
I did 2 of my 3 teams. I had already done my wild previously when I was not going anywhere with that team.
To those of you listening, this is something that I'm not surprised by. This is what I often call fantasy fatigue. We've played fantasy football or American football fantasy leagues in the past. We notice that there's a tendency that when a player gets too busy or maybe they're not able to do as well in their performance, that they drop out halfway through the year. So that maybe that's what we're experiencing right now. Some fantasy Formula One fatigue. You have to realize that in order for a driver to go up or down in price is if there is moving, trading in and out of that driver. If the fatigue continues to settle in, it's going to be harder and harder to take advantage of day trading with your wild card. Now, the second thing that could be the problem is what I call the meta. When everyone starts using the same drivers and no one's trading in and out new ones, then you can't really day trade or benefit from that. Pretty much you just have to have the best drivers that everyone else is playing with to keep pace. Is that what you feel like on your teams, Dad?
I missed the opportunity because I didn't understand the overall concept since it's new to me this year, that I really should have had a team that I was day trading with to get the high value while people were trading. Because I noticed now a lot of people are using the same 5 people with the same constructor, so not much trading. I guess I'm learning this lesson for next year.
Let's take an opportunity to look at our lineups. I had team number 1, which I try to be very disciplined, and I do no more than 1 or 2 subs per race. It's beating the other team by exactly 100 points. The second team is my day trading team, and that's where I try to get my value as high as possible. But right now, both these teams have the exact same lineup. And so like you said, Dad, it seems like everyone's settling in on the Fav 5. I do have some day trading that I'm wanting to do for this race for Team 2. If Gasly does not seem like he's going to perform as well as Sainz, I'm going to actually pick up Sainz and drop Gasly. Gasly has been performing well in qualifying, but then he tends to have problems or lose positions throughout the race. This last race showed that quite clearly with him and Tsunoda both dropping down the order. And I didn't pick up on this. The Ferraris purposely did not want to qualify into the 3rd round because they wanted their choice of tire. So they purposely got their drivers to qualify lower. And if I had known that, I probably wouldn't have had Gasly or Tsunoda, right? I would have tried to have one of the Ferrari drivers, but that's something that I wasn't aware of until the race and after the race when commentators were talking about Ferrari's strategy going into that. You seemed a little surprised by that, Dan. What's your reaction?
I didn't even realize that until recently that whatever you qualify on 2 is what you have to start the race with. I can see some gamemanship there, and I wouldn't have predicted it, but it makes a lot of sense.
For those of you at home, if you don't realize this, there's this old rule that's carried on through the current turbo hybrid era of Formula One. You have 3 rounds in qualifying. Whatever the fastest time you set in Q2 is going to determine what tire you start the race on. So if you set your fastest qualifying on mediums, you start the race on mediums. Ferrari did not want to get locked in on a certain tire, and so they chose the tire that they wanted to start the race on, but it was slower than getting in Q3. But they did that on purpose because they wanted a particular tire that they wanted. That actually is going to play into the sprint race qualifying for Britain. I'm posting a video that'll be out this week trying to explain it in detail for you, but here's as it pertains to tires. That rule that Dad just described will not apply for the qualifying this race. Whatever you finish in 3-round qualifying or knockout qualifying will then determine the starting grid for the sprint race. The sprint race is whatever tire you choose. It's about 100 kilometers, so there's really no reason to do a pit stop or you're going to lose a lot of time. It's similar to the sprint races done in Formula 2. And then you also get to choose whatever tire you want to start the race on. The teams have choice over what tires they're going to use, and they're getting allotted 5 soft tires for qualifying. That means everyone's going to be going as fast as they can, and there's really going to be no changing in tire. What do you think about that, Dad, with the tires kind of being homologated for qualifying, but then that allows them to pick whatever tires they want for sprint race and the race itself?
I think that's a reasonable thing to do since this is a sprint race and we don't know how the tires are going to be affected. I think it makes sense until they get things established, and they might keep it this way.
Yeah, that's why I think that Ross Brawn is trying to try this out, because if it works, they're going to move towards that in the future. Whoever wins the sprint race qualifying is given pole position for this race weekend.
And championship points for the top 3.
True. You get 3, 2, and 1 points. For fantasy points, it is just like qualifying. If you finish in first place, you'll get 10 points down to 10th place, which will get you 1 point. Back to dynamic pricing report, just want to highlight with you the strategies of drivers you might want to consider for this coming race. There is one driver who's eligible for a power streak. That means that he can get both the quali and the race streak at the same time by finishing in the top 10 for quali and the race. Now remember, sprint race qualifying does not count towards these streaks. So he just has to qualify really fast. He'll get plus 5 points. He just has to finish the race in the top 10. He'll get his extra 10 points. And that is Norris. He is the only one eligible for a power streak. There are 2 that are eligible for a race streak, which is plus 10 points. That would be Alonso, who has quietly been surprising people with his consistency for racing this part of the season, and Ferrari. And then eligible for a quali streak, which is plus 5 points, is Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas, Red Bull, and AlphaTauri. If you're trying to make a decision between Red Bull and AlphaTauri, I'd probably say go with Red Bull. Red Bull is going to get so many more points than AlphaTauri that it would not be worth to make that switch. But Dad, you were having a decision about 2 drivers in your lineup. Who is in your lineup for this race with your day trading, and who do you want to be your lineup come race day?
Because I was trying to day trade, I picked up Sainz, Gasly, Giovinazzi, and Aston Martin because they all looked like their green was going that way, the sentiment was going that way, and I avoided over a week and no movement at all. If I have enough value, I might try to keep Sainz. I definitely want Norris back on my team, then either Sainz or Gasly, probably Mick Schumacher, and then back to my Red Bull as far as my constructor.
As it pertains to the Mega Driver, I think you and I are in agreement that Verstappen seems like the clear favorite for the Mega Driver, which is times 3 points.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have the option of Hamilton, who usually does well at the British Grand Prix, but Verstappen seems to have good pace. He might actually win this time.
Hamilton has won 7 times here at this track. Verstappen did win last year, though, because they raced at the British Grand Prix twice. Well, the second time was called 7th anniversary. Verstappen does have the pace. Even though Toto Wolff back in Monaco said, well, we're not bringing any more upgrades for this season. We're shifting our attention to next year. Then their chief technical officer comes out and says, well, actually, we're going to bring some packages to Silverstone. Why is that so important? Is because teams have to perform well at their home Grand Prix. That is where most of their sponsorship and target audience and almost eyeballs are going to be on them in the press. They don't want to show badly at their home Grand Prix. Now, you were trying to decide between Perez and Norris as turbo driver. Tell me your thought process for that.
Well, Norris usually does pretty well at the last race. So I thought, well, maybe this is a one-time thing. Next week, he won't do as well. So maybe Perez will not mess up. Maybe I should turbo him. But with the consideration of the race bonuses and the quality bonuses, it sure makes sense now to turbo him. Even if Perez does a little better in the sprint racing, he doesn't have those other streaks.
Best case scenario, both these guys do really well. It was a heartache last week when the 2 went head-to-head and Perez lost, right? Yeah. But if both of them do really good, you're going to make a bunch of points off of Norris like people who would have turboed him last week did.
I was considering whether or not Alonso might be good in my lineup instead of Gasly or Sainz. So do you have any insight on that?
That's a good point because Alonso is eligible for bonus 10 points for the race streak. On our Google spreadsheet, which I built from the ground up, link will be in the description below. Let's go and compare that. So you said Alonso versus Gasly. Gasly has been losing roughly 3 places. That's the one mark against him, and Alonso beats him there. But look at the average points per race. Gasly's getting you 15, and Alonso's getting you 11. But Alonso costs nearly $3 million more. And so this is probably why Alonso has been under the radar for so long, because he's just expensive enough to not be worth it. Here's to put things in perspective, okay? Mick Schumacher has 9 points average and Alonso has 11 points average, and there is a $9 million difference. So more people are probably going to pick up Mick Schumacher than they are Alonso if it's only 2 points difference per race. And so this is why I think Alonso has been flying under the radar. Let's go back to Gasly. If Alonso got his race streak, he's now worth it because he's getting 21 points instead of 15.
That does make sense that potentially he would be worth it if I have that $3 million more because he can get that streak. Now, you did mention about Gasly and if you had enough potentially taking signs. Can you show me that?
Now, this is more of a toss-up. Sainz does beat Gasly by a 2 points average. He has 20 more points over the course of the season. He does cost roughly $3 million more. So while Alonso and Sainz are very similar in price, most people have been picking up Sainz. Now, as it pertains to positions gained and loss, Sainz, like Alonso, is not losing places. If Sainz looks like he's going to qualify, and if Alonso looks like they're going to qualify good, then that means they're probably going to retain their positions during the sprint race and then during the race. So those are potential guys to pick up. And now we compare Sainz with Alonso. Alonso is $500,000 more expensive than Sainz. Wow.
Okay.
So Sainz seems like a better option than Alonso. Not only is he cheaper, but he's also getting a higher average of points. In this case, it's 17 average points to 11. So what are your thoughts between Sainz and Alonso?
So if I can afford Sainz, then I think I'll go ahead and pick up Sainz because the price point and the streak, it doesn't add a whole lot to his.
Right. So let's say he does get plus 10 points. Well, then that means he's only beating Sainz by 4 points. In the grand scheme of things, that's not a lot.
Yeah,
it could
be a difference between a podium.
That's true. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yes, the ORC. That could make all the difference. Let us show right here on our spreadsheet. I made a brand new ORC or One Race Challenge leaderboard. If you go to the link in the description below, you can see our code for our One Race Challenge. Actually, while I'm thinking about it, let's just go there. We have 25 teams that have entered. This is your opportunity to not have to worry about trying to catch up or how many points you got. No, it's just you versus everyone else who submits. For the top 3 teams in scoring, you get a podium ceremony celebration. Now, there are 2 things that you have to keep in mind that we do not put into our calculations. The first is mega drivers. Many of us are going to use mega drivers this coming race. That is not calculated into the base. And so if I mega drivered Verstappen, he got me 180 points. I would only score 60. Just take that in mind. It's because the mega driver could be used every week, and we don't want that just to be what decides who gets on the podium because someone decided to use mega driver. The second is, say you and I have the same amount of points. Tiebreakers go to team value. Now, let's clarify. Not tiebreaker on your position, but tiebreaker on who might be able to be on the podium. We had a race where we had roughly 15 people who got 3rd place. So whoever had the lowest team value was able to take the 3rd step of the podium. That way we're able to award those that have lower value who may not have been able to catch up in time. But don't fear, if you are tied and you have the highest team value, we give you the Fat Stacks Award. So we can give you a shout out. And then lastly, if you got a funny team name that we thought is hilarious, then we'll give you the Meme Team Award. Let's go back to the Google Sheets though, because Dad currently sits at the top of the leaderboard. Tell us about that difference in the points and how you might think 4 points could be pivotal if Alonso or someone else was able to get a streak.
If you look at some of these results between 1st and 2nd place can be as minor as 4 points. So if you look at the last race, 2nd and 3rd, the difference was 2 points. So the difference between a person getting 2nd place and 3rd place. So 4 points can make a difference in the ORC Elite.
3 races ago, you were tied for 2nd place with 246 points and 1st place got 248. 2 points could be the difference being on the podium. As you can see, if they're listed as green, they got the Fat Stacks Award. If it's green with white numbers, then that means that they beat the ORC Elite. The ORC Elite is the best potential team you could have had with 100 million or less value, and that is calculated with our algorithm after each race. we see here on the left for people who were on the podium ceremony. That's exciting. But I wanted to be able to keep track of everybody just to show that you can be consistent and not have to risk it and do crazy things just to get on the podium. And so this is a way to track people's performance throughout the season. Dad, you're currently at the top of the leaderboard with 73 points, 1 gold, 1 silver, and 2 bronze. What do you think has been the key to your consistency?
I think I was able to, at the beginning, figure out the consistent 5 players and the constructor, and I played them consistently. The problem is I didn't do day trading, so now my team doesn't have as big of a budget. So I think I'm going to start not doing as well as people who have bigger budgets and can afford better drivers. So I start off well, and I'm not too optimistic I'll continue in the highest on the leaderboard, but I'll do my best.
Yeah, you can do your best. For everyone out there, that's your challenge. See if you can compete and see how you can get a shout out. Because at the end of the day, we're all a part of this community and we enjoy everyone who participates. And this is just at your names. You are now historically a part of our leaderboard. Our news anchor for this week is Itsy Bitsy. Itsy Bitsy's like, and I'm out of here. This will be the first time that Hamilton will be referred to as Sir Lewis Hamilton at his home Grand Prix. They actually named one of the 2 pit rows after him. So, Dad, how do you feel about now he's getting to race a part of his own history?
I think that'd be exciting to make history in your own country, and so you'll forever be noticed in history.
That track has like names for everything. Each corner has a name. Now, Hamilton's name is there for pit row. He's won there 7 times, most of any other driver. Of course, he's also British, so that's his home Grand Prix, and they like being able to have him a part of that history. He is now going to be in the annals of the names associated with this grand track at the heart of British motor racing. In other news, the Australian Grand Prix has been canceled. That's like my bro's favorite track, and so that is a shame. Hopefully next year it'll be on the calendar. Lastly, this happens to almost every YouTuber at some point. They say someone's name differently than how you expect them to say the name, and then someone goes in the comments and says, well, this is how you pronounce the name. I'm not putting anyone down. I'm just saying that I am an American who grew up in the rolling hills of the Southern Ohio Valley. You'll notice sometimes we have a little bit of an accent, even though I try to keep it pretty neutral. And as my brother says, well, we usually try to say what the announcers say. Well, those guys are British, which means that the way they speak and pronounce is even different from how we pronounce. But Dad, you found a really great video that we're going to put the link in the description below. Take us through this video.
It was pretty cool. The drivers were actually trying to guess the numbers on the cars of other drivers, well, including themselves. And Leclerc mentioned Leclerc. And I think probably because he was talking to other English people. If he was talking in his native language, French, he would probably say Leclerc. I took French a couple years in Canada, and that's how I would have pronounced it in French. But since we're speaking English and his other drivers call him Leclerc, we'll do that. The other person that came to mind also was Vettel. If you're talking German, you say Vettel, not Vettel. Since they're talking English, they give each other latitude when they're speaking English. And I'm sure that they would not be as impressed if we pronounce it wrong speaking in their native language.
With a different pronunciation. Exactly. So we're trying our best. Some people, we will say certain ways. For example, Schumacher, Mick Schumacher, when he said Leclerc, he said with a hard C. He was like, Leclerc. And I was like, oh, so I'm not the only one who sometimes drops a hard C. And then, like you said, Leclerc later said that. But like you said, we're not going to stress it a lot. We're going to try to do our best. And hopefully you guys give us some slack. It's now time for It's in the Numbers. Last week, we tried to step up our game and make it a little bit more difficult. But lo and behold, you guys are smart, and you guys, through the power of teamwork, were able to get the answer. Dad, take it away. Who are our co-champions for the It's in the Numbers?
Shout out to Christoph, who got most of it correctly. And then Tristan came in and helped solidify the answer. So I appreciate both of them and their explanation.
Christoph, he posted that our numbers were referring to Bottas and Perez, and that is correct. The numbers were the gap between the two racers at the end of the Styrian and the Austrian Grand Prix. Now, the first race was very close. The second race was like 29 seconds, but Perez had got a 10-second time penalty. When you finish the race and you've gotten penalty points after your pit stop, those 10 seconds are then added at the end of your time. So his finishing was actually 39 seconds, but we put 29-10 to see who would be able to know and parse that cool little stat. So good work, you guys figured it out. Now for this week's It's in the Numbers. Because we don't have a race, we're going to go back through the annals of history and give our It's in the Numbers.
Numbers are 7x and 8x. It's named the years, and the hint is Historic Silverstone Grand Prix. So be sure, if you're brave enough and can figure it out, to let us know what it is and why it is. And then we can make a shout out like we did this time.
Yep, leave it in the comments. And like Dad said, show your work. It's now time for League DRD. We have a cool format starting this week. It is our head-to-heads have officially started. That means with the 4 of us, 2 of us will face off and the other 2 will also face off. And then each week we will score a point or maybe 2 points, depending on how many of the races we're able to beat against the other person. And then you redraft and start over against a new opponent. We're calling these the Match of Lords. Now, if you were defending King, they will get paired together next week, and then that will be called the Match of Kings. But right now, we got 2 Matches of Lords. In the first Match of Lords, we had Dad versus Dominic, and Dad did a clean sweep. He just stomped Bro down into the ground with the power of Botas and signs. And Dad, how did you feel about the monster powerhouse of that combination?
Well, you have to enjoy when you have a powerhouse because it doesn't always happen that way. So the next race, I might not even have Botas.
Yes, you may not. Foreshadowing, League DRD, it stands for League Driver Rotational Draft. We don't have money at all. So you take the finishing positions of the drivers from this race, and then that will decide the draft order or the draft cycle for the following race. When we get to the spreadsheet, we'll give you the more of the details. If I pick up Botas, Dad can't have Botas. And if Botas is that good, he might be overpowered next race as well. Bro, how did you feel about your chances going the next race with 2 credits to be able to spend? Since you didn't get 2 championship points, you'll get 2 credits.
Botas had as many points as my 2 Kings put together. Dad's court race put together is equal to one of my Kings race drivers. All right?
That's true.
I will get to exact my revenge on not Dad because I'm not even facing him next week. And that's just fantastic. Paula, I am so sorry. It's you and me. So you will get to feel the wrath of credits.
The credits spent.
Wait, but she has 1 too, yes?
Yeah, before we kick it over to that, let me clarify for everyone. In our League DRD system, we have a ceiling and a floor. We don't have negative points because I don't like negative points, but also because you don't want to penalize the better driver by removing points. And then we have a ceiling to balance it out. So 30 is the max you can get and 0 is the least you can get. And that's why having someone like Botas or Sainz, you practically got near perfect score. But then that means Leclerc and Gasly are your median. You want drivers that are scoring around 15 points and you'll have a solid team. But let's kick it over to the second Match of Lords. I just could not comprehend the big brainness that Paula had, which he's like, I'm going to go all Ferrari and all Williams. Tell me your feelings going into that race and seeing the Ferraris just dominate on the track.
Honestly, I'm just glad that I didn't come on here and apologize or justify an awful strategy. Even on Friday, I thought that I was doomed and they didn't do great on Quali. I was really, really happy because I really thought I was just going to get completely destroyed. So
you had me shaken in my boots. I barely edged out the Ferraris by 2 points. And this is why we wanted League DRD to be ceiling of 30. So that you could actually have this tenseness. If you had drivers that got more than 30, you could blow away both drivers with just your 1. And then we get over to the court race. Wow. I don't think I've ever heard this combination in Fantasy Formula 1, but you made the Williams boys work. Congratulations on that. And as we promised, if you wanted to participate in League DRD, you can type in the comments to participate with us. And Aman Shokani, he put Botas and Leclerc in his King's race. He turboed Botas, and then he put Gasly and Schumacher in his court race. And on the Google spreadsheet, we have a location for our challenger. So he, of course, dominated us in both races.
Honestly, we'll just do better in the future and we will bring the heat.
But it was close. He would have only beat my Kings by 2 points.
You would have only beat my king by 2 points. Yeah, okay. I'm so glad I was facing you this week.
With a turbo.
With a caveat. With a turbo. Okay. That's true. So starting this week, when we can start spending credits, we'll be able to use 1 credit for a turbo, which will double the points. We can use 2 credits for a mega driver, which would triple the points, or you could spend 3 credits, which would get you a wild card, which is different from Fantasy Formula 1 standard. In our terms, anyone who averages over 21 points is labeled as a wild card. You cannot draft them, but you can buy their services with 3 credits, which adds a 3rd driver into your race. Of course, they still cap at 30 points. Put in the comments below if you would like to participate with League DRD, and we will choose one person to be our challenger for next race. Now, one thing we would like to add is put a little number next to your driver so that we know your draft order. That way we can quickly double check to make sure you did a correct draft. And then also put a T next to your driver that you are going to turbo. Let's now look to see how the championship is shaping up in our League DRD. We did our reset midway through the season because now we're doing head-to-head, but it looks like Dad is in the lead with 2 championship points, of course 0 credits, and then I and Paula are tied with 1 championship point and 1 credit each, and then Dominic picking up the rear with 0 championship points, but 2 credits to spend. And as we know from history, just because you're down 2 points does not mean a thing. You can spend your credits and you can catch up. As we said before, team matchups are going to shift each week. So the 2 people who won the King's race are going to face off each other the following week. Because if you are the defending king and win, you get 2 points instead of 1 for winning the King's race. So that means going into our DRD draft for match number 1, it'll be Dad and then myself. And then for match number 2, it will be Dom and Paula. It is now time to pick our keepers. In League DRD, you get to have 1 keeper before each draft. Now, we'll have a tie break rules to try to figure out who gets to draft first. They're keepers. Number 1, whoever has the fewest championship points. So that means I get to decide my keeper and draft before Dad does. Dominic gets to draft before Paula because he has 0 and she has 1. So that means for match number 1, I get to pick my keeper first. And unfortunately for Dad, Botas is not yet a wild card. He's at 20. But here's the problem. If I pick up Botas, I am pretty much shoot in for 2 really low drivers.
Here's a plan for you. How about you pick up Schumacher and then just let Dad have Botas and you don't have to worry about it. That seems like a good plan. That seems like everybody could be agreeable to that.
I'm about to die over here with that nonsense.
I don't see Dad complaining. He seems to think that's a good idea.
Sure, why not?
Let's stick with Botas as my keeper. Thank you very much. Dad, who is your keeper going to be then?
So mine is going to be Signs.
Signs got 28 points. He's practically a Botas. So Dominic, who is your keeper going to be?
I think Leclerc is the only one that we both have in similar, right? So it doesn't really matter. If I don't pick Leclerc, she can pick whoever she wants. I'm actually, since I'm going to be picking first in the actual snake draft, I'm going to pick Schumacher because then, my next draft will be Botas. So I'm going to go with Schumacher.
Big brain play right there.
You can have Leclerc if you want. I've got big fish to fry.
And then Paula, who are you going to have as your keeper?
I'm going to stick with Signs, actually.
Ooh. Let's go to the DRD manager.
Oh no.
Yeah, you can't pick up Botas.
Oh, no. That is horrible. Hold on. I should probably check my work. I can't pick up Botas with Schumacher.
Nope.
While he's contemplating or wooing his losses, let me explain to you why that's the case. As we said with League DRD, it's a driver rotational draft, which means you take the finishing order from the previous race, and then that decides the hierarchy for this race. So as you can see, Dominic wanted Schumacher, which is an 18th position on the left. If he drafts Schumacher, then that means the next person he picks has to be from Schumacher's availability, which is under a Y column. And as you see, Botas is too high. He is not available if he picked up Schumacher, which means that if he wants Botas, he either has to have Mazepin or Ocon, and neither of those guys were on his team to have as a keeper.
This is no good at all. Because here's the deal. I pick up Schumacher. She has signs, and then she could just pick Mazepin or Ocon, and then she ends up with both. Oh my. Ocon, why do you do this to me?
Ocon with the
Ocon is doing me
DNF.
dirty.
Yep.
Okay, well, I made my pick, and she already picked the actual next best option for me.
So as you can see here on this draft system, because Sainz was already drafted, it has got the dashes through it. So that means Mick Schumacher can draft anyone between Ricciardo down to Ocon. And because it's a snake draft, he only gets to draft one, and then Paula will be able to draft two in a row.
I'm going to have to take some drastic measures here because I am in a bad situation. I'm going to pick Alonso.
Big brain, you could get 10 bonus points if he's able to get that race streak. Surprise, surprise. Sainz can draft Latifi, Vettel, Mazepin, or Ocon.
Ocon.
Ooh, okay.
As surprise, I will take Bottas.
Wow, Russell's so high. I'm not so used to him being that high. Between Russell down to Mazepin.
I have very quickly come to terms with my situation, and now I'm just trying to figure out what I'm doing with it.
You're putting a smile on Paul's face.
I promise you I'm not trying to. I don't think I have a chance of winning the King's race at this point, so I'm going to go with Raikkonen as my third. What that will give me
is either Ricciardo, Leclerc.
Ricciardo, Leclerc, and Gasly is so rough. Leclerc is probably on average the best option here. But like Ricciardo, when he does good, he gets more. Gasly, I'm not 100% sure how I feel on him.
So the question is, who do you think is going to be better at Britain? It's a high-powered circuit.
Probably Ricciardo.
How did he do at France? The last high-powered circuit was France.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
How did he do in France? Did Leclerc do good in France? Did Gasly do good in France?
Let's go to the different graphics tab, okay? The 6 top scorers is Verstappen, Hamilton, Norris, Perez, Bottas, Leclerc, and Sainz. France was round 7, and Leclerc got negative points, negative 2 points.
Was that because he lost so many positions?
So Leclerc at race 7 lost 2 points, and Ricciardo gained a little over 20 points at France.
Well, I guess I will go with Ricciardo then.
Okay, so Leclerc is still available, but as you pointed out, she's pretty much stuck with Mazepin as her 4th driver.
Yeah, it's good that he's graduated from Mazepin to Mazepin. That's good.
And he's graduated from Mazepin to Mazda not on my team.
Now on to the match of kings. As we can see here, I made Bottas my keeper, and Dad made Sainz his keeper. And I will be drafting first, which means I'm pretty much stuck between Mazepin and Ocon. Ocon's race average is 8 points. That's abysmal. You can't get worse than 0. You can only go up. I'm going to pick up Ocon.
May the power of his contract suddenly reinvigorate him.
Okay, Dad, so you got Latifi, Vettel, Schumacher, and Mazepin. Latifi.
Okay, let me have Vettel. And then I have basically...
Everybody else?
I basically have the same question that Dominic had.
Ricciardo versus Leclerc?
And you think I'm going to give you help after what you just did to me? No. Okay, look, I'm going to give you some great advice right here. This is a secret between you and me. The other two cannot hear this, all right?
Okay.
You want to go with Latifi.
Okay.
Latifi.
I thought you were going to say...
Latifi won Paula the race last week. Facts.
I thought you would say to take Leclerc and have an all-Ferrari team like Paul had last week.
That also is very strong.
You're taking Jeanmark's advice on who you should pick up?
I have confidence that Ricciardo is getting used to his race car better, so I'm going to go with Ricciardo.
Give me some Leclerc.
I'm surprised after you said in France he scored a negative 2 points.
When you do League DRD, you have to figure out the ceiling of a driver, right?
Mm-hmm.
Leclerc on his good day is better than everyone else on this list. I'd rather take that than having someone who's just going to give me measly points, right? Now, if Leclerc has a bad race, he's probably not going to, knock on wood, he's not going to DNF, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he should still be better option than these other people. Give me some Schumacher.
All right, so I have Pardo, so I have Giovinazzi, Raikkonen, Latifi. Well, I appreciate you giving me Raikkonen. I'll take him. He'll prove to be the poor choice you made. Nah, I didn't say Latifi. Come on. Raikkonen.
I'm sorry, it was a little hard of hearing.
Yeah, right. Uh-huh.
Look, you know why I didn't care between Schumacher and Raikkonen?
Why is that?
Because if I win the King's race, I can't have the court race. So it really doesn't matter who my fourth pick is.
Ah, I see.
And if you win the King's race, I automatically win the court race. So it doesn't really matter.
So there's no reason to really put any eggs in the court.
Not if you're in the match of Kings. Yeah, if you're in the match of Kings.
And I don't have a turbo. Pretty much lost the King's race. Unless one of your drivers DNF or something.
Yep. Okay. Now to the Discord.
I don't have to use my turbo, correct?
Nope.
Nope. You do not have to spend your credits. That is correct. And they will be permanently available. And so one strategy Donick employed last year is he didn't actually spend his credits until he felt like he had enough to try to do a clean sweep of King's races. And it almost worked, except each time he mega drivered, his guy would DNF. And that happened 3 races in a row or something ridiculous.
Yeah, like literally, they were like car issues or whatever. Fortunate.
Everyone ready? Okay, 3, 2, 1, reveal! Dom has Mick Schumacher in the King's race and Raikkonen. Wow, wee wah. And then Paula has got Bottas and Sainz. Okay. And then for the court race, she's got Ocon and Mazepin versus Dominic's Alonso and Ricciardo. Okay, so he is clearly going for the 1-point strategy.
I feel sorry for the person who loses our match.
Credits. The defending king in the match of kings, you get depleted of credits, and then you get people who are in the match of lords who are building up credits, and eventually one will break through and just trounce them. Yeah.
So you mean me?
Now on to the match of kings. Dad has got Sainz and Ricciardo in the King's race. Facing off versus my Bottas, who I am turboing.
Surprise, surprise.
And Leclerc.
You know, the nice thing is I do have hope because, you could always have one of those problems.
Yeah, I could, which is why turboing him is good because then he could make up the deficit. But also, I don't want Leclerc having a problem like he did last time, and then Bottas has to bail me out. And then you've got Vettel and Raikkonen in your court race, squaring off against my Ocon and my Mick Schumacher.
Yeah.
Court race is actually going to be pretty close, I think.
I think mine will take it.
Well, if I win the King's race, then you take it by default.
But I don't want to take it by default. I want to take it because I did it.
Double zeros. And there you have it. Thank you so much for joining us in this week's Pitwall Podcast. And thank you again, Dad. It was a great conversation. And we look forward to this coming race week with the new sprint qualifying format. And we have been your knights in racing armor. Until next time, we'll see you on the Pitwall.